challenge is a simple question. Can I build functioning two-factor authentication with just Supabase and Flutterflow? So I'm challenging myself to my first build in public. Question is, why two-factor authentication? Well, two reasons. Firstly, a learning experience. Now, I'm 99.9% certain I can get the functionality working. However, for me, it's more about the security of it. So what can I learn about the security of what I'm doing? Because ultimately, just because you can build something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. So that was the first reason. And the second reason was in the Flutterflow docs. So when you're sort of setting up your email authentication with Supabase and Flutterflow, you come across this particular bit of information in the docs, and it says turn off email verification. Now I know this isn't email verification, we're doing two-factor authentication, and it says basically because due to the Supabase auth behavior, you need to disable it. So my theory was, okay, let's have a look into that, and I decided to go with 2FA and see if we can get it to work outside of the built-in Supabase functionality. So that's where we are, that's why I'm doing it. So let's have a look at the plan. Right, now starting this off probably goes slightly beyond the spirit of building public. However, I wanted to show you what I did start this off and why I had to change course, because it was fundamentally flawed, and I didn't want to show you 20 minutes of me building something just to delete it and start again, because that was wasting everybody's time. So now this is actually an app I use on my phone all the time, every day. It's not designed for desktop at all, which is why the layout is going to look a bit funny as I show you this, so please excuse that. Now as you're going to see, I'm going through this, I'm building this on our on the auth, my sort of auth template that I'm sort of building up. I'm building it round as a web app, which hopefully should be also sort of be able to utilize in mobile. However, I'm showing you on this, and my plan was we were going to log the user in, we're going to block them from going on any further, and then we're going to show them a pin code box where they have to put in the verification code that we've texted to them via SMS, and then they can move on. However, that is fundamentally flawed because you can just get around it. So if I type in, I've set up an account on here, and the password. So right, if I log in, we show the box. Now that's all very well. I mean, I have done no formatting of this at all. This is purely just for me so I can demonstrate why I changed tact. So basically put in the code and submit. None of this does anything at this, it's just to show you the box. So however, so if I just go back, click the back button, this may work differently on a phone, but on a web app this is a non-starter, and this is why. So if I go back and on the back button, because I've been previously logged in, it just takes me to the login page. So the activities page when you log in is just got a list of all your run, swim, cycling and everything that you've done as part of your training plan. Obviously there's nothing on this because it's just a blank account I've set up just to demonstrate, but that's took me straight past the box that had a blocking action. So on my alert box I had put it as a block. Basically it was non-dismissible, and obviously that's fair enough, you can't dismiss it, but also that just bypasses the box for a start. So let's go back to the login page and do this again. Right, log in, get the box. Box non-dismissible, as you can see, but all I've got to do, if I'm a user who knows what he's looking at, all I've got to do is go to user profile, and there you go. Because I'm an authenticated user, it just completely bypasses the box which is meant to be non-dismissible. So I can actually, if I go in, the app that I use every day is called Training Days, and I've duplicated it and called it Training Days for Breaking, because that's essentially what I'm going to try and that's what the point of this. So if I go here, we've got the box and custom dialog, and it's non-dismissible. So basically that was a non-starter. That was my plan originally. That was a non-starter. So I moved on, and essentially the process is going to be the same. We're going to not log the user in. We're going to verify their email address. We're going to then text them a code, and then they enter the username, and then they enter the code, and which takes them to the username and password page, and then they can log in after that. So that's why I'm doing it. Now, as you see, as I go through this, because I'm post-recording this, because basically what happened was my explanation of this I wasn't particularly happy with, of the reasons why I changed course. So this has actually been done after the fact, but I'm doing now. So as you see, to go through this, there's a few security issues along the way to do with where I'm accessing the user information from, but I do fix that at the end. So if you look at anything we shouldn't be doing that, I fix it at the end, and then you'll explain at the end what the next steps are. So hopefully you get a lot out of this. With that being said, let's carry on and start the build. So this is the current workflow, and it does function. Now our entry page, so I've tried a few ways around actually the other way, but it just didn't work. So because one of the things I did was go to authentication. Our entry page was our login page, and then the logged in page I changed it to a blank page which the user would never see, but it just some additional actions. Anyway, but it ended with all the same problem. I went down a rabbit hole of, okay, we can add another layer into Supabase to check if they actually are authenticated twice, and we can put that on every page. And I thought, no, this is just overcomplicating something that is really defeats the object of doing this. So I scrapped it, and this is what I ended up with. So we've now got an entry page called status, and our logged in page is the dashboard as planned. So if we go to the status page, so this is our entry page for our user. Now I will also open it in the app. There you go. That's what the user sees when they come to the page, because the pin code box and the verify button are conditional. And then what happens is the user types in their email address, click submit. So we can do that now. And what that does, generates the code, texts them the code, which that bit I haven't set up yet, input the code and click verify. So essentially, user types in the email address, click submit. We get up the pin code box and we verify them. So on this now, we've got some pretty simple actions. So we'll go to custom actions on this one first. Right. So when the user types in their email address and submits it, the user is not logged in any way, shape or form at this point. They're just a user turned up to the site. First thing they do, triggers a custom action called check two-factor authentication, check TFA, and we are sending the email address of the user to Supabase to check if they've got TFA enrolled, and we're returning an output variable name TFA status. We'll go to the code in a second in the custom actions. So essentially, if TFA status returns true, i.e. our output variable from our custom action is true, it's a boolean, it's true or false. True being they are enrolled in 2FA, then we trigger a custom action called get code, and that is what generates the 6-digit code. If it turns false, they just navigate straight to login. And what we're doing, we're passing the parameter of their email address to the login page, so you don't have to type in it again because that would be a pretty poor user experience. So what we're doing, user comes to the site, types in their email address and they click submit, and then if they're rolled in they get the PIN code box and they have to click verify. If they're not rolled in, it just takes them to the login page. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reset that, and I'm going to go, which you can't see at the moment, but I'll come to this shortly. So what I'm going to do now, I've just changed the user, which is myself, opt-in status to false, and that will now take me straight to login page, and the email address has been passed as the parameter, so you don't have to type it again, like I say, because that's a pretty terrible user experience. So then just password and log in. Right, so that's this page, and then the custom actions we've used there, we have got check TFA first. We are just calling our old friend Supabase remote procedure call. We've got a Supabase function called check TFA, and we're passing the user's email. And then on the get code function, we are calling access code, and we're passing in the email again. So that's what we're doing to get round the fact that we don't want to log the user in any way, shape or form before we do the two-factor authentication. Now, the way I got around this is the check TFA function that we're calling from our custom action. And basically what we're doing, passing in the email, we're declaring a new variable of user ID, which is UID. Now what we're doing, we're using the email. So in the auth.users table, you have the email and the user ID, and I didn't want to put the email in the verified table. I wanted to keep it to the UID because that's in the public schema. So we're passing, so basically where the email matches email, we're going to insert the user's user ID into this variable, and then we're checking it against whether they're verified or not and returning true or false. So the way this is work on the table front, we've got a table called verify, we've got user ID, whether opt-in true or false, and then the PIN code is temporarily written to the table, and that will get nulled once it's been verified. That will return to null. And then opt-in false, and as I said a second ago, I just changed that to true so I could show the two different ways it works. And that's basically where we are. So our user has entered the email address, enter the code they've been texted via SMS, and they click verify. So our verify action, we are calling, first thing we're doing, calling that custom action called confirm code, and what that does is confirms whether the PIN code is the one that's been temporarily written to the table. We're passing the value of PIN code, which is from the that's the widget state from the box, over the PIN box, and we're passing again the user's email address, and that does the same thing. It goes in and grabs their user ID from the auth.users table, and then again we've got a boolean confirmed. If it returns a boolean, is the code correct or not? If it's true, just navigate to login and pass the parameter email again for the same reason, so the user doesn't have to retype the email address twice. And then if it doesn't match, you just get an alert box that says code failed, it's incorrect, and it just navigates back to status, so it reloads the same page, so you have to start again. That's where I've got to, and the reason I haven't built that whilst recording is because I had to think my way around the problem, that because I originally had it in my head, like I said, when you're going to log the user in, block them from getting anywhere, and make them enter the code before they could move on. But it was just obvious to me once I started that you had to get around it, that you could easily get around that. So like I say, security is a secondary thing. So there's a couple of things there on the security that may be an issue, but this is something I'm going to look into at a later date. At this point, this functions, so that's where we are. Right, so I'm going to just demonstrate how the code works. So if I just switch over to Supabase second, so I'm going to change my opt-in to true. We've got a code, but that's going to get regenerated, but we will go over that in a second. So I type in my email address, click submit. I am opted in, so I haven't set the text up, as I've explained several times. So my code, what I need is 740321. So 740321, and I'll open up the thing. So what we're going to do here, we've got the response being printed to the console. Just check it should come up true. Hopefully it did when I checked it before. So verify raw response. So our response to our code check is true, and now I can log in as using my password. So there we go. So ignore that one. That's to do with the profile image, which has not been set up. So keep getting that error, which I will have to sort out at some point. So yeah, so that's functioning. The next stage on that front will be to set up the text side of it, so we can receive the code via SMS. But now the next bit is to set up the 2FA functionality. It's going to be completely optional whether you want to log it, whether you want to enable it or not, and that's what you can do in your user settings. Excuse the user interface, it needs changing because I'm rebuilding this so it's completely responsive to mobile, and as you can see it's not. So this one is changing. It's not particularly great anyway, but anyway, this is not about that, it's about functionality. So what we're going to do next is build in the enablement of 2FA from in the user settings. Right, so to enroll our user in 2FA we need to do a few things on the user profile page, and essentially the first thing we'll need to do is check. So the switch will be either on or off if they are enrolled or not. If they're not enrolled, it will stay off, and then when they switch it on we'll get some actions. If they are enrolled, it will be on, and yeah, that'll be fine. Then we'll have to do something to update the phone number or add a phone number basically. So on page load we want to check if they're enrolled. Now I've based in little bits. Now the pick URL stuff, that is broken still. I haven't finished that, as I explained when I was demonstrating a minute ago. So what we've got a new custom action called check auth TFA. Now this is slightly different to the original one because we now have access to the authenticated user's information, whereas when we were using the check TFA before, we had to use their email address, send it into the auth.users table to get the user ID so we can check whether they're enrolled or not. Now we've got access to the user's ID because they're an authenticated user. We've got a slightly different custom action. The only thing that's different is what we're inputting to it. And then essentially what we need to do is first value is the action output is auth confirm if it's equal to true. Right, so if that's true we need to update the page state which we've created called auth confirm. Set value to action output, which is down there, auth confirm, and in fact that doesn't need to be conditional at all, does it? That's nonsense because it's true or false. Right, delete conditional actions. That doesn't need to be conditional. So because all we're doing, set value to the action output. So whether it's true or false is actually irrelevant, because auth confirm. Now what I'm also going to do is add an action. I don't know if this will work in this instance. Update page date, add field for rebuild, set value. Right, so what happens is a lot of these things, when you do, I'll call it page rebuild, set the value. Right, when you perform custom actions on page load, I have found that because the page is loaded and then it seems that the custom actions then take place, the page doesn't display the outputs of the custom actions. So if you put in this, if you have a page state that is set to rebuild the current page on setting this value after you've done your custom actions, your values for your custom actions will then display on the page. That's what that's for. So because it doesn't seem to work otherwise, I've tried it a few ways. I may be wrong, but I've found this works for me. So right, and then the reason we didn't need to do that as conditional there is because basically it's just the value of the initial value of that is simply true or false, and that is a page state. So there needs to be no conditional actions because it's either true or false. That's basically it. However, right, that's fine. So that's great. So it's currently true or false on page load. Now what we need to do is need some actions on toggle it on. So toggle it off, toggle it on. We need to do toggle off as well, actually. So we need to unenroll from 2FA, but we'll leave that for now. So it's value equals true. Right, get rid of that. So in fact, get rid of all of that. Obviously I started playing with that before and didn't get anywhere. So if we toggle the switch on, what we need to do, we need to get a code, and that will be, and then we need to get a code and display a custom action, a custom box which we haven't yet built. Yeah, because right, so we've loaded the page and we are not enrolled. We toggle the switch. We can send email, we can text ourselves a code, but we haven't yet put the phone number in. So we need to create a phone. That's just update. So we need to create the phone number when we enroll, which will be by showing a custom component. So I'm going to build the custom component now, and then I'll come back and we'll go from there. Right, so I decided to not go with the custom component, decided to go with a page. So I've got a page called create phone, and then I created another one called confirm phone. So given the fact that I'm trying to go sort of mobile first on this, although obviously this bit still needs sorting, I thought page may just be a better way of doing it. So essentially on the enable 2FA toggle switch, all we're doing is navigating to page create phone, not passing any parameters, nothing. We no longer are doing anything with the code there. That's purely just a navigation switch. And what that does, it will open the create phone page. And again, I mean, it's probably a bit basic. You can, probably put a bit more text in here and a bit more explanation, but it does the job. It works. So we've got a drop down for the country, text box or text field for the phone number, and then submit button. I'll go into the custom actions in a sec. And then the other page we've got is confirm phone, where you put in your code and you submit. So on the create phone, this is where we've got a couple of custom actions, nothing particularly nothing complicated. So we've got a custom action where we add the phone number to the user, and then once we've done that, we've got one where we get the auth code. Now we haven't yet set up the SMS part of it, but this is the bit that generates the code, and it's got generate code auth is a custom action, and I'll explain that in a second. It's exactly the same custom action in terms of what it does the same as the login, except this one our user already authenticated, so therefore we're doing it slightly differently. And then navigate to confirm phone. So add phone. There is nothing to no response. So we've got text field, which is phone number, and the phone, which is phone number, phone, the input argument phone, which is text field, and then the code, which is the country code, which is the drop down. That's what we're adding to there. We'll go to the action itself in a second. In terms of the code, the get auth code. The reason what we're doing differently here, if you remember when we were logging in, we passed the email to go and get the user ID, but because the user's now logged in, we've already got the user ID, so we have access to that via the authenticated user section, which we don't have prior to logging in, so hence why we did it with email. So that's very slightly different. And then just navigate to confirm phone, no parameters passed. So we'll go and look at those first before we move on to confirm phone. So add phone, this is using the Supabase client auth, and essentially we're updating the user attributes phone, so add in code phone. So what we're doing, we're passing in the code and the phone number, and we are essentially combining them into one parameter to pass into the phone number box in the auth table, the user.auth table, or auth.users table should I say, and that'll be the phone number where we text the SMS to with the code on. The get code auth is essentially exactly the same. We just do an RPC call to access code auth, and again the only difference between this and the previous one is we're going directly with the user ID for the user, we're not using the email address at all. That's the only difference. So, and then we are navigating to the confirm page. So essentially what happens is, let's go on to here, so the user clicks on enable 2FA, there we go. Sorry, let's go back again. There's something there that needs fixing because it's because I'm doing back, but essentially the user clicks on enable 2FA, something there to be checked out obviously. Got a drop down box. Now at the moment I've just manually put in UK and US, or US and Canada I believe it is. Now there is there's a custom widget on the marketplace which I didn't think much to, if I'm being honest. I've just got rid of that. And I know there's a package on pub.dev which I haven't thought about using yet, but I will look into that. But I need obviously a better way of doing that. I'm not going to manually type them all in, and obviously just the numbers is no use because people don't necessarily know what the country code is, so that needs a bit of thinking about. And then obviously put in your phone number, click submit. So, and then that takes you to the confirm page. So essentially what will happen is you get your text message, type in your PIN code, click submit, and then our actions on here, we've got confirm code auth. So it's the same function as we used prior to logging the user in, except we're just using user ID. So we're sending the PIN code and the user ID to Supabase to check if it matches. If it does, if it matches, we change the status. So basically we got a custom action to change status. I'll come to that in a second. What that's doing, again, sending user ID to the table, and that is setting the user's status of whether they're opted into 2FA or not to true or false. Well, to true in actual fact, because its default is false, and we're changing it to true. And then from there navigate back to the user settings page. Once that's been done, and if it's false, if the code doesn't match, it's getting an alert dialog saying it didn't match, and it navigates back to users. Now then, so I haven't tested that out properly because when you go back, our enable 2FA is actually still set to on. In actual fact, it should actually be off. So I'll have a look into that. So let's go to the custom functions related to this one. Right, so confirm code auth. Essentially what we're doing, another RPC call. We're calling confirm pin auth, and we're passing in the pin code and user ID and returning the response true or false. And again, the only difference we've got here is we're passing the user ID, not the email address, for the reasons I've just explained. And then change status. All that does, again, we've got a RPC call, update status. So in the verified table, we'll be updating the user's status from from false to true, i.e. opted in or not. So I'll just get the verified table up now. So it's the verified table, just the one user still, obviously, user ID, which we now have access to, which is why we don't need to go and grab the email address out of the auth schema. Currently set to false because it makes my life easier logging in and out rather than messing around with it all the time. And then we've got a pin code in there. So that is only temporarily though, because what I have done, and I haven't ran it since I did this, this is the confirm pin auth. I've added a thing where we're setting the code back to null again once we've confirmed it. So we're confirm pin auth, which is the new one for the opting in rather than the signing in. So we're passing the pin code, which is an integer, the user ID, which is, although it's a string in Flutterflow that we're passing, which, let's go back to confirm code auth. We're calling confirm pin auth, and we're passing in the user ID as a string, but in Supabase it's actually UUID, not a text. So that's one to remember. And then what we're doing, we are doing the check, and if the user's code is basically, if it matches the where user and the code match, we're passing it into the code check, and then we're resetting that, resetting the code box in the table, the code column to back to null, and returning the code check as true or false. So yeah, that's what we've done. That's how it's going to work. So I'm just going to get it all set up. I will do a test, and then do a test which I'll show you guys, make sure it works, and then I'll tidy a few things up, and then we'll move on from there. Before we do move on, just one more thing in actual fact on the users page. So we're enabling 2FA here with the toggle switch, and then we've got an update phone, as I said, and I'll keep saying, I suppose, until I make it look like it doesn't look terrible. The user interface needs to change a bit, but we've got an update phone button, and all that does is exactly the same thing as what we've just been through with the enroll. So and that is navigate to create phone. So when you toggle on the switch, navigate to create phone. When you update phone, it navigates to create phone. And the reason it does that is because on page load we have got custom action. We've got a few custom actions in actual fact, but we are checking, as I think I've already said previously, we are checking if the user is already logged in, so sorry, already enrolled. So what will happen is that should already be on, set to on when you come to the page and you're enrolled. And then if you just need to update your phone, you can just click on this button, although if you toggle the switch off and on again, I assume it'll probably do the same thing. But that's, you know, some of these things I've got to iron out. As you can see, I'm doing this on the fly, so yeah, a few things I've got to iron out. So I'll have a look at those, I'll test it out, have a look at those, iron those sort of few bugs, and then yeah, we'll see what we've got left. So I've been away, I have swept up, done the cleaning, done the polishing, so let's see what we've got. And we've got something that functions, which is obviously Good news. So what have I done? The most important thing I've done is in Supabase. So I mean, it was always there. I hadn't done anything with it. It was blank. I've got the public users table set, public.users table set up. So now all of the functions that I've created pull the information from there, not from the auth scheme, which is obviously shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And that now populates by trigger functions when the user signs up. So that's all set up. And on the on the sort of the user dashboard, where if you remember the toggle switch wasn't functioning as it should have done, that was user error. It turns out there was an underscore in a variable that shouldn't have been there, so it was looking for user underscore ID instead of user ID. It took me ages to find it, even though it was right in front of my eyes, but you know, sometimes how these things go. And the other thing I did was on toggle off. So if we go into the action editor, so toggle off, now what you're going to get is a dialog. Do you want to opt out of 2FA? And it's like a yes, no, you know, cancel and confirm, and basically just a warning that makes your account less secure. If you click proceed, or if you click confirm, basically, you won't be surprised to hear we trigger a custom action that essentially turns the opt-in value in the verified table to false, and we just confirms that you've opted out, and then navigates you back to the users page where the toggle switch will now be off. And then if you click cancel, it just takes you back to where you were and doesn't do anything. So that's been fixed, and I've even found time to fix the URL referencing error that was coming up in the console all the time, because it was just getting on my nerves, and it took about 10 minutes, so I just did it while I was at it. So that's what I've done. It's now time to test it out and make sure that everything functions as intended. Right, okay, so I'm currently not enrolled in 2FA to start this off. So we're going to go through it. We'll log in, we'll enroll, we will obviously then put our phone number and everything in, and then we'll log out, we'll re-log in with 2FA, and then we will unenroll, and that's how we're going to do it and make sure that all functions. Well, that's passed test number 1. Okay, so we're in, that's fine, we're not enrolled, we've got in. You see, got me little pictures. I'm quite happy I've managed to sort that out. So now we're going to go through, enable 2FA, and go from there. So put in the phone number, the drop down box, I haven't populated that, that's for a future project if this ever gets used for anything of an MVP or an app of some description. So put in phone number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. There we go, easy to remember. I'm very lucky to have that as my phone number. And then we will now have a code in the box, which we're still not opted in obviously, so we've got 266 729. So 266 729. Right, submit. Okay, we are now enrolled into 2FA. That's good. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to log out. And now we're going to re-log in again. And now it's going to give me a code, which we're now opted in true, which is good. And we've got a new code, 419627. And then I'll go back into this in a second because it nulls the code, which I didn't show you a second ago, but 419627. Verify. And now that's obviously the code has been accepted. And code is now gone, so that can't be reused, so that's good. And then password. And we're in. So again, all works as it should do. Go to user profile, and I want to opt out of two-factor authentication. So we're opted in currently, there is no code. So we want to opt out. So are you sure you want to opt out and make account less secure? Yes. Want to opt out. You have now opted out for 2FA. Our toggle switch is off. So we're out definitely, and we go back in here. We are now back to false and there's still no code. So that functions as intended. So what's left to do is the connecting to the API for sending the SMS rather than obviously me looking in the database, and then we're going to look at security. So but I'm going to end this video here, and that's going to be the next video. So the API thing is actually quite straightforward, so we'll do that a bit first next time round, and then we'll look at security. So I've got a few ideas in terms of some extra layers we can put on the front end before we have to use the password. So to make it a bit more secure on that front, I need to make sure that where I've used the security definer rather than security invoker role in Supabase, I've done it when it's absolutely necessary rather than just because it makes my life easier. And then we need to look at some RLS policies for the table. They do have some, but they probably need to be much more robust if you're ever going to use this. And also we're going to look at putting some time limitation on the codes. At the moment they will sit in the table until they've been attempted. Whether they pass or fail, it will just clear the code after that. But I'm going to do it so you've actually only got 2 minutes or a minute or whatever it may be until the code just automatically clears anyway. So that's what I'm going to do next time. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much. You're a trooper. So if you have made it this far and you've got something out of this that you can possibly apply, please consider clicking the thumbs up button, because it's a massive help with your mighty YouTube algorithm for a new channel like this. With that, I'll thank you for that in advance, and I'll speak to you next time.